Just a quick heads up before we start. On Sandwiched, we talk honestly about life, loss, and caregiving. That means conversations may touch on topics such as death and grief. We invite you to listen with care, and please do step away if you need to. Welcome back to Sandwiched. Today's guest is Jeff Johnston. Jeff is the founder and CEO of Brighten, the host of the Living Undeterred podcast, and the founder of the Living Undeterred project. Jeff's story is one of true transformation. From a financial entrepreneur to the startup founder of a mental health support mechanism. His work is driven by unimaginable loss of his son and then his wife, and an unshakable commitment to help others live with purpose, resilience, and hope. Jeff, welcome to the show. So, you and I have talked a little about your story, but maybe let's, for our listeners, take a little bit of a step back. As comfortable as you are, Jeff, can we talk about, kind of to your point, from 50 to 55 and the situation with your son and also ultimately with your wife?
So at age 50, I'll just kind of start there. So I built up an investment career from 23 to 50. I had a finance degree. I saw the movie Wall Street when I was in high school, and I thought, okay, that's what I want to be. I want to be a broker, not necessarily the decadent lifestyle they were living, but I kind of like that capital chasing success in the big house. What college student doesn't want to have all that? And I set off on that journey. And by the time I was 50, I had built up about an $800 million AUM practice, which is larger than a lot of banks around here. And we had 9 advisors on my team, and we had 7 staff. And I had a TV show for 5 years, and I had radio for 15. Our show is still running here in Cedar Rapids. It's the longest running financial show in Cedar Rapids history. And I started it like 15, 16 years ago. Well, I was clipping along really good. I was coaching basketball. I was traveling. My wife, Prudence, was 9 years younger than me, and we were having a great time raising the boys. And then all of a sudden, October 4th of 16 hits, and early that morning, I got that call that every parent dreads. You become a member of a club that you didn't ask to join, and one you certainly can never leave. And I could see that call coming because what the call... on the other side of the line, I was told that Seth, our oldest son at 23, was found dead of fentanyl, which I'd never heard of. They call it an overdose, but it was poison. I mean, he was poisoned. And that was the first time I was 50 years old. And that was the first time that death came into my life and basically said, you know what, Jeff? You think you've got this figured out. You have a lot of really cool stuff, but I'm going to take from you somebody you love. What the hell are you going to do about it? And that's what I eventually told myself. That's not what I told myself initially. I played the victim. Yeah. I was cursed. Why me? I played all that. My alcoholism, which I'd been an alcoholic since I was 18, that got worse, which is hard to imagine when you've been drinking that many years, 6 days a week. How could it get worse? But it did. And that began the rebirth of who I am today, that moment in time. And it's literally been 9 years now. And it seems like yesterday. Like, I'm not lying. It seems like Friday. It was so shocking to your soul. And you realize how short and how fallible we all are, and how we take for granted things till we don't have them. I had lost grandparents and pets and stuff, but a child, just not anything they train you for. And so at that time, I stayed home. My wife and I tried to work on what we're going to do. And we had a 15 and a 13-year-old boy, and they just lost their boys, and they lost their older brothers. You can imagine how that goes. And I decided, I saw my wife, who was 9 years younger than me, looking 9 years older than me in a very short amount of time, because her drinking was getting worse than mine. So December 24th of 17, I just looked in the mirror, Paul, and I stopped drinking. I can't explain it. I've never been tempted one time since I stopped. I don't consider myself sacrificing alcohol. That's a fear-based mindset. What I do is I consider myself getting my life back. Mm-hmm. That's an abundance mindset. I don't call myself sober because sobriety implies I'm in a fight with something. I just don't drink. To me, I've got it down to being very simple. And if I ever did start drinking, or I drank tonight, I wouldn't torture myself. I would give myself grace and mercy that I'm a human being, and it's not a mistake. I didn't fall off the wagon. I just drank today. I mean, I'm a fairly pragmatic person, which in sometimes gets me in trouble. But I think during grief and what I've been through with the suffering I've been through, I think it's actually served me quite well. But it doesn't mean that I have had some horrific experiences, probably multiple every 6 months. Um, but now instead of fearing those moments, I actually kind of lean into them, and it's like my soul workout. It's like going to the gym. You don't really want to go, and you don't really like it when you're there, but when you're in a car, you're like, damn, I'm happy I went.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of look. That's how I look at my suffering now and my grief. It's like I don't look forward to it. I don't like it when I'm in it, but damn, when I'm out of it, good job, Jeff. You can take on anything. So now when I'm asking for a VC to write me a check and they say no, your business model sucks. I'm like, oh, gee, that hurt. Next. It's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I don't care. I mean, no one can hurt me right now. I don't feel like I'm not jinxing myself, but I feel like I can pretty much take on anything right now in my life. But it doesn't mean that when these things happen, I don't feel pain and suffering. I do. I'm human.
In the next part of the conversation with Jeff, he shares openly about a moment of deep crisis, including thoughts of suicide. If you or someone you know is struggling, in the US, you can call 988 for suicide and crisis support. Anywhere else in the world, please do check into local resources. Listener discretion is advised in the next section. I don't have children, but I can empathize and I believe how I might not be able to handle the situation if I was presented with it. And I think to your point, there really is, as far as we can see, like one of the most imaginable experiences. And so to your point, right, as founder to founder, obviously, venture capital and funding and backing and customers are so important for our growth. But to your point, at the end of the day, that is not what's going to make or break your life. That's really just okay, great. There's a billion others out there who want to come in and join us in this. So no problem, on to the next.
A lot of it is a story that you tell yourself. I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, you're constantly telling yourself a story all day long. And most of it, I think it's 88% of what we do in our mind is ruminate in the past, and we think about the future, and we spend all of our time in things that are over and never happened.
Yeah.
And the reality is we miss all these great opportunities that we could be better husbands, better dads, and so forth. So I've tricked my brain, and I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this to be disparaging or sound callous, but when I walk into a room and I see a bunch of people in front of me, I trick myself to tell myself, you should be grateful for what you've been through. Because in a way, I almost feel sorry that people haven't had to deal with the amount of suffering that I've been through. Now, granted, I know people that have been through a lot worse, cancers and things like that. That's why I didn't want to sound disparaging to people that are also in different situations. But I'm simply saying what I tell myself is that I walk in the room saying, I carry Seth and Prudence on my shoulders as a tribute and honor. And I almost feel sorry for the people who haven't been to the depths of hell that I've been. Because when you're there, what you can tap out of that well is priceless. It's absolutely priceless. There's nothing better than looking in the mirror knowing that you survived something as horrific as bearing a child and a wife. At a time for a man, 50s is a golden time. That's when men should be cashing in their chips and buying second homes and traveling. I'm burying my family and sitting in my closet with a gun to my head. So I don't recommend that path, but there's something poetic about the path because, and again, I tell myself I'm not on a path. I am the path. Mm-hmm. There's no predestined path for me. My son didn't die for a reason. He died for a poor choice he made. And now each day I get up and I lay bricks on that path and I get forks in the road. Do I do this? Do I do that? I have to pick one and I lay more bricks. I don't believe there's a predestined destiny for me. I don't believe somebody has laid this out for me and they're showing me the way. I am the way. And that's the mind. It's not arrogance. It's more of just, I would go back again to stoicism that you or as Viktor Frankl said in Man's Search for Meaning, suffering is my opportunity. And it's reframing 101, Paul. Yep. And people ask me all the time, how'd you get through this? And I'm like, well, I have talked to some therapists. I have taken some prescriptions. Don't do it anymore. I've tried everything, meditation, breath work, working out. But something that's so simple and in abundance and free is what the stories that we tell ourselves. So that's what I do now. I tell myself a story that's optimistic, that's favorable. And I love the choice of words you said, right? When I done telling you said, I have empathy for you because I don't want your sympathy or pity.
Mm-hmm.
But dude, I'll take empathy all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to be pitiful, honestly. And I used to think people looked at me, oh, here comes that dad that lost half his family. Oh, I'm sorry for Jeff. It's like, I don't want anyone being sorry for me. Instead of being sorry for me, why don't you start a nonprofit? Why don't you write a book? Why don't you start a podcast? Why don't you buy an RV and drive around the United States? Why don't you do something instead of being sorry for me? Being sorry for people isn't going to help anything. But reaching across the table, picking them up, shaking them off, handing them a $20 bill, patting them on the butt, say, go out and change the world. That's empathy. That's believing in people. We don't have a system of broken people, Paul. We have a broken system.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I'm glad because I think, for me, my words are the way I try and connect with people. And I was very mindful of course, I hold sympathy for the experience. But to your point, I use empathy because I can put myself in your shoes to try and understand how might I experience something like that, right? I think it is really, truly different. Sympathy is very much like, oh, poor them, right? And I think that's much more a reflection of ourselves' inability to lean into difficult situations than it is the person who's dealing with a difficult situation. And so I'm glad that resonated because it's always truly like, I'm a think first before I speak 9 times out of 10. So I try and really think through how I want to connect with someone in a conversation, whether it's here on Sandwiched or otherwise. And really, when you're talking about kind of rumination and, looking to the past, looking to the future, and actually spending more time grounded in today, it's really, kind of a good reminder of, you're right. Like, we can't do anything about yesterday. We can learn from it. We can try and be better or different. Tomorrow is going to be tomorrow, whatever it looks like. So to your point, like, how do we find joy and peace and connection in today? Let's give the high level to the listeners because, in Sandwiched, it's going to be a lot of folks who are navigating caregiving, loss, but also too, Brighten is a legacy component for you, for your son, for your wife. But there are probably a lot of listeners out there who may actually find that it's something that they'd like to learn more about. So let's give them an opportunity. Why don't you share a little bit more about Brighten?
I will, but I also want to talk a little bit about the caregiver mindset because even though people hear the ending, like what happened to Seth and Prudence, 9 years Seth struggled. We were a caregiver. Yeah. I have elderly parents. My dad's 94 and he's still alive. My mom passed away 3 months after my wife. So as I wasn't taking care of my parents, but they were aging. Mm-hmm. And then I have, my 3 boys and my wife's an alcoholic and she's struggling with depression. She's taking all these antidepressants. So I'm caregiving for my wife. I'm caregiving for my oldest son. I'm caregiving for a 13 and a 15-year-old. I'm caregiving for my parents in a way. It's like, yeah. And then I'm struggling as an alcoholic myself. So I can certainly embed myself in the most of your listeners' stories and probably relate to a lot what they're going through. So that aside, I have empathy for anyone in the caregiving, and I'm still caregiver. I mean, for my granddaughter now and for my other 2 boys that are married, and we just got a new puppy, so I'm a caregiver there. But Brighten, so the idea of Brighten was from the concept of harm reduction in the recovery community. And the harm reduction basically says you meet addicts and those that are struggling where they're at, okay? So I've handed out Narcan to homeless people. I've been involved in distributing fentanyl test strips. Anything we can do and again, I'm not promoting drug use, but if people are going to use them, let's make sure they're using them in a safe way. We do that with drinking.
Yep.
I mean, drinking alcohol has done more damage to society than heroin ever has. I mean, if you look at the deaths from your liver and your kidneys and drunk drivings and spousal abuse and all that, alcohol causes tremendous amount of damage, yet we endorse it as just not a big deal. By the way, if you're going to get hammered, just have a friend drive you drunk. We don't say that with people who use drugs.
Yeah.
If you do drugs, you deserve to go to jail. It's like, I understand the illegality and all that stuff, but I'm talking about human care. Like, do we really care about these people? My son was incarcerated. He was in prison. So I saw all this stuff. But Brighten was meant to be built as an empowerment tool using the best innovative AI strategies and techniques when it comes to behavior, journaling, mood tracking, sentiment analysis. I wanted to make the Brighten experience credible, but not clinical. We didn't want to feel like you're at the doctor's office or feel like you're taking a pill or feel like you're talking to a psychologist. We wanted to be very self-assessing, less self-diagnosing, but more like empowering yourself to just learn and take this journey of mental wellness and not this struggle of mental health. Again, it's going back to my idea about sobriety. I'm not sober, I just don't drink. We don't have broken people that need to be fixed in our society. If anything, we have a broken system that needs to empower, love, and support people that are struggling. They're not broken. Nobody, I don't think anyone's broken. A lot of people that end up as adults have been sexually abused, or they've been molested, or they had something happen in their childhood trauma they had nothing to do about. Yet society claims they are broken. And I don't agree with that. I'm not a clinician, I'm not a doctor, but that's just how I'm trying to build it in our culture at Brighten of less victim and more victor mindset. You know what? It sucks my son died. I ain't no victim. And it sucks my wife died, but I'm not a victim. And I've forgiven every single thing in my life, even the person who sold my son the drugs. I've forgiven that person because I'm not going to get to where I need to be with my spirituality and my peace and my joy, harboring anger, hate. At least for me, it doesn't work. I know some people become very fierce advocates and attending protests and getting involved with the laws and all that. I'm like, nah, there's people that have that. I don't want to do that. I want to build something tangible that's empowerment based, love, empathy, courage, use AI and make it an app because that's where 97% of all humans on the planet have access to a smartphone or they own one. So that was the idea behind the Brighten app.
Yeah. Well, and what I appreciated about it too was I do think that as someone whose background is psychology, so I own that, right? I'm not a clinician, to your point. I did look at that space, but that's not the route I wanted to go down. Although I worked with a therapist many years of my life, what I liked about what you talked about is it's less about clinical and much more about just meeting them where they are, right? It's much more of the self-reflective nature, the journaling, the kind of looking inward in a way in which that works best for them is a lot of what I heard. And so I think that, to your point, some people don't have access to, therapeutic intervention, mental health, right? Maybe they don't want it. Maybe they don't need it. Maybe there's stigma. And so I think it's great that you're creating something that is, to your point, accessible 24/7, backed by design and theory and strategy, right? And so thank you for what you're doing. And to your point, like my work with Tumbleweed and with Sandwich is very much from lived experience, right? It really, and it's a different driver as someone building, a company, a startup. It drives me in a very different way. To your point, the things that keep me up at night are, the 63 million family caregivers who are struggling to keep it all together, and more is getting added to their plate. And then there's government shutdowns and questions around Medicare and Medicaid and what are we going to pay for? What are we not going to pay for? Right? People need more support. And I'm a believer that technology can help create connection and support in more affordable ways in some situations.
I do also want to go a little bit further into this.
Absolutely.
What we're talking about. And it's what Desmond Tutu said. And this was really what, and maybe you've heard this quote, but this is the thing that really I decided on the lane to pick. So I could be treatment, prevention, whatever, when I was thinking about this idea. He said that at some point, we need to stop pulling people out of the river. We need to move further upstream and find out why they're falling in the first place. Okay. Yeah. Think of it this. Here's some statistics to back that up. 57% of American adults today are not seeking mental health treatment because they don't have access to it or they can't afford it. So they need it, but they can't get it. And 3 to 6 months is the waiting time right now, and that's worse in rural America. Okay, that's a systemic problem in the way that we do it. And we don't have health care. We have a sick care system. It's like they're designed to keep us sick. And that's just my bias because my son started with Adderall. My wife had 12 prescription bottles when she died. So I'm not blaming the industry. I'm saying that we all have some culpability. But when I was thinking about the app, I thought to myself, in the last 20 or 30 years, would you say We have more labels. We have more diagnosis. The DSM has been expanded. We have more fire people putting out the fires. We have, I mean, it's amazing how much money has gone into treatment the last 20, 30, go back any time frame. And then I just sit back and ask you this question. How has that been going? Just look at the evidence.
Yep.
Where are the depression rates? And you can blame it on COVID. There's always going to be situational things that happen, but look systemically over time. Okay. So just average in COVID into the numbers. If I just looked at a 5-year period during COVID, sure. But if you go 30 years, the impact of COVID gets watered down immensely. But look at the statistics across the board and find me one. Now, I know overdose deaths has dropped a little bit the last year. That's great. But not if you average it out over time. The curve is still doing this. Mm-hmm. But not the nitpick or cherry pick. But find me a statistic that's substantially better. 10-year rolling average. 5-year rolling average. You can't because there aren't any. And if there are, you have to look really hard. So I ask this question, or I submit to you. Do we just keep throwing good money at bad? Do we just keep double downing and hedging our bet by trying to get people to put out fires? Or, as Desmond Tutu said, we shift our focus as a society and focus heavy on prevention, education, and not in a fear-based, like don't do drugs, Paul, or you'll die. Mm-hmm. Fear-based. But don't do drugs because, and then you find some way in there to present that narrative as because your chances of having an enjoyable life are lessened. And that still could be mildly fear-based. But, and again, I think for parents, you live by example. How many people I looked at when Seth struggled? I was drinking.
Yeah.
I was not supportive of Seth in that manner. I should have realized his alcoholism was getting him in trouble. I did, but I was so consumed with me drinking, I didn't make that commitment. So I tell parents out there, you don't want your kids to drink? Don't drink. You don't want them to smoke? Don't smoke. You don't want them to swear? Don't swear. It's like, you don't want them to have a poor relationship? Don't cheat on your wife. I mean, it's like, and again, it just goes back to a lot, especially young men today are really, really, and young women for that matter as well, with self-harm and cutting and all those things. But most of this stuff starts at home. Is it going to be an easy fix? No, because who predicted social media?
Yeah.
You know, we're always a short amount of time away from the next COVID or the next attack or something. And that has made this generation very much lacking meaning and purpose because they're like, why am I going to school when there's not going to be a planet? You know? Mm-hmm. And so we've got to install a sense of meaning and purpose along with a better, healthy relationship with money and taking care of themselves, like how much sugar intake, time on TikTok, their sleep patterns, things like that. And then it's the combination of all three of those that can improve human flourishing. At least that's my thesis I'm trying to prove with what we're doing with Brighten.
Yeah. Well, and what I liked about what you said too is, you know, whether it's a child who is, you know, a year old or a child who is 25 years old, you know, the statement that I always grew up with was the do as I say, not as I do. That is terrible, right? I mean, as an adult now, like I can suss out those individuals who that's how they operate, and I steer clear of them because I have no respect, right? Like I would much more respect a person who said, I did this and I shouldn't have, or here's what I would have done different. And they actually own up to the experience. But to say like, don't, whether it's a parent, an adult, a mentor, it really doesn't matter. But that statement just always has rubbed me the wrong way, even as a kid, right? And I've always been considered very mature for my age, right? I'm probably now at the age where it's like, okay, you've already been mature, you're supposed to be. But when I was young, man, that used to just rub me the wrong way. And I'm like, I'm supposed to look up to you? Like, no, that's not how this is supposed to work.
Mm-hmm. No, I always like to say that there's always like nuggets of wisdom in everything that we experience. And I've been really trying to, even if someone says no or something, some investor or a customer backs out of a contract, I'm like, there's something educational in this experience that I have to find. It may not be right there on a platter, but There has to be, you know.
Yeah.
Think of any negative experience that you could possibly have, and you're telling me that you couldn't find one nugget of wisdom from that. Anything. Even if it isn't there, you have to fabricate one. You have to make one up. And if you're struggling with your meaning and purpose, you got two choices. One, you sit around waiting for it to show up on your doorstep. Hey, Paul, guess what? Here's your purpose. Well, in a way, death did that to me.
Yeah.
Or you just go out and kick ass. You just go out and start rolling up your sleeves, come up with something like a podcast like you're doing, or a book, or you want to be a speaker. How many people do you know say, oh, I'm going to write a book, and then they never do it? It's like, just do it. Just do it. I'm on my second one in the middle of doing all this. And I'm doing it in a different way this time. So, and I've got all these other things I'm thinking of doing. And I'm 59. I should be kind of slowing down. I'm like, no effing way. I can't ever see me slowing down. I may do things that are a little bit less financially stressful. There's so many things I want to do the rest of my, 30, 40, 50 years I have left on this planet. And it goes by so fast.
Yep.
I mean, I'll be 60 next year. And I'm like, 60? God, when I was younger, that was like nursing home people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I ran 7 miles on my elliptical yesterday. So I'm trying to stay in the best shape that I can. And I get up in the first hour, I'm sore, I'm limping around. But I'm like, that's my body telling me I have to work harder. If I don't want to be sore, I got to exercise better. The reason I'm sore is I don't exercise enough.
Yeah.
So again, I'm just reframing things in my life that are presented as barriers or challenges and trying to turn them into opportunities.
I had a couple of thoughts. One is, as someone who works in the aging space, obviously caregiving, because a lot of our focus is the caregivers for our aging population. I have a lot of people in our circle, customers we talk to, we do support, we've done different groups where we talk to the aging population. And to your point, the ones who are healthier longer are the ones who are still more active. And by active, I don't just mean going out and running or biking or cycling. I mean actively using their mind, right? My grandmother's going to be 80 in a couple of weeks, and she still works part-time with her daughter, who's a real estate agent, right? And is she slower than she was 5 years ago? Of course. But she's learning new things. She's actually taking some AI courses.
Grandma's going to be 80. What are you, like 22?
So my parents and my grandparents were very, very young. I'm kind of going the opposite way. I'm going to be, I'm the one where when I finally have kids, I'm going to be the person that's like, oh, are you great grandpa? No, I'm actually the dad, right? And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So my parents were 16 when they got pregnant, right? My grandparents were 16, 17, right, when they got pregnant. So mathematically, the benefit is that I always say I was blessed in that I actually got to know my grandparents really well and my great grandparents.
Amen.
Right. I got time. Most people don't even know their grandparents and great grandparents. So that's been the to your point about finding the positives in the experience. There were a lot of challenges having such young parents. But on the flip side of that, I got some really cool experiences, right? I knew people that were born, 125 years ago. So, it's a little bit different. But, to that point, I just wanted to kind of double click on, stay active. And I agree with you. Like, even when I was a teenager, like 60 was, to your point, like, oh my gosh, like you're, 3 days away from the grave and 2 days away from a nursing home. And 60 now it's young. I mean, it really is. 90 is, okay, 90, maybe I'm going to slow down, and 100's when, okay, maybe I'll talk about retirement, right?
Yeah. And I've read a lot of studies, and I think I even read a book a few years back where they interviewed like 100-year-olds. And then they took the answers and put them like in a pie chart and like showed like the consensus. And it was overwhelming. It was like almost 100%. Their biggest regrets were always the things they never did.
Yep.
It was never, I regret starting that startup that failed. I regret, marrying the wrong person. Maybe that one a few times, but it's like normally these were regrets of effort, regret of legacy, regret of pushing themselves. Obviously, regret of taking better health. That was like high up there too, smoking and drinking. But it was an overwhelming theme that people in their deathbed never sat there and go, I regret that I did that startup that didn't work out.
Yeah.
That's not even on the top 100 because I guarantee you someone that old has benefited from whatever horrific startup experience would have happened. In the moment of it, you're like, I regret starting this maybe, but down as you get older, you'll have less regret on failures by far. I'm convinced of that. That's why I tell people today in their 30s and you're worried about going full time into something. You're worried about, what are you worried about? What are you worried about? You have one thing I didn't have. You have time.
Yep.
I was 56. I don't have time to have this thing not work. It has to work. You're 31, 32, 33. Shit. You may have 5 or 6, 7 startups by the time you're my age. What are you worried about? And it's like, that's a fear. That's a fear-based mindset. And a lot of it comes from comparison. A lot of their peers are posting things, how successful, and 5-time startup exit, and guys are like 22. Yeah. It's like, how in the hell are you a 5-time startup exit? You're 22. I don't get that. It's like, I don't get it. It's like, and that makes me feel like I'm worthless because I'm a 0-time startup exit and I'm 59, and it's like, again, I go back and I think parts of my story, if I share them in a way that sounds encouraging or challenges people, and it gets someone to get off the couch and write that book or start a podcast or start a startup in their mid 50s or 60s, then I did my job. You know, I think with AI now, you can be so much older and get so much more done. But the key is finding someone on your team that understands it. Because I don't think a 59-year-old is going to go out and learn all this stuff. We just don't have the ability to do it. At least I don't have, because I wasn't overly school smart. But I've got a good team where I've found young people that understand all this stuff, that I can be out closing the deal, selling the dream. We have a joke in our team meetings. It's like, let me sell the Lamborghini. You just make sure it runs when they buy it and it drives off the lot.
Yep.
When they bring it into service, you make sure you understand every piece of that Lamborghini. I'll sell it. I'll be out there on the lot. I'll be out there telling people how good they look in it, how fast it goes, and what it can do to their mental health. Let me sell the dream. Because, I sold insurance for something years. Talk about a hard something to sell. But I don't, at 59, want to learn all this stuff. But I will say, though, I've learned a lot by immersing myself into this startup space at an age when most people are looking at slowing down. I've learned a lot about myself, Paul. I've learned a lot about what I can do, which I really believe right now I can do anything. I wasn't that way when I was struggling after Seth and Prudence died. I was going to quit. Life was too much. Death had to have been a better option. And now I look back on this journey and I'm like, holy cow, man, from 50 to 59, good job.
Yeah.
You need to be real proud of yourself. And I don't know if you're like me, but I beat myself up. I mean, a lot. Imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Gaslighted by people. Someone posts something, I'm happy for them. And I'm like, damn, man, I suck.
Yeah.
Right. And you know what, though? I'm not going to change at 59. This is kind of who I am. I just have to respect those feelings. And I tell you what, now when I see a post, I see something you post, whatever, I'm like, damn, Paul's a good guy. I'm a good guy. I deserve success. He deserves success. And I want to help him. And once you do that and you start doing things with no expectation, I don't expect you to do anything for me. I like you. You're nice. You seem to present yourself well. You got a great, I don't want to call it a product, but you got a great service. You got a great process going. Why wouldn't I want to support you? You're not taking anything away from me. This isn't a zero-sum pie. Paul does well, Jeff doesn't.
Yep.
And that's how I think we think today.
Yep.
Most things are not zero-sum.
Yeah, there's plenty of space out there for sure. And thank you. And I feel the same way. I'm so glad we got connected for many reasons. But to your point, I operate very, very similarly. To me, like, I've had a lot of people who have opened doors, made introductions, listened, right? Just listened to my idea or story or questions and made time. And I try and do the same. I get a lot of feedback, to your point, in the founder space, which is not really necessarily all of our audience and listeners, but, I think that it might resonate for some folks. Sometimes it's like, well, why are you spending time doing that? One, because it brings me joy, and two, because someone else did it for me. So to me, I have people I look to and I'm like, that was meaningful to me. So if I can find the time to carve out 10, 15, maybe an hour to connect with someone who, whether it's a founder, whether it's I'm mentoring a college student or even a high school student, I had people who have opened doors to me and I want to do the same. So absolutely. Yeah.
One way I like to look at this, Paul, is I didn't choose mental health advocacy. I didn't choose to be a founder of Brighten app. It chose me.
Yeah.
Out of all the people that this experience could have picked, and this is a little bit of fate. I'm not a huge fate believer, but I like to think of myself not as a chosen one, like, religiously
Yep.
or something like.
Yep.
I mean, suffering picked me because so far I can handle it, and pain picked me because I can handle it. I say so far because I do question sometimes how much more I can take. But there's something, I don't know, poetic or perverse about thinking that you were selected in this manner because most people probably wouldn't have made it this far, you know?
hmm
And that
Yep.
again, I look in the mirror, I feel good about my courage. I feel good about my conviction. I also have a huge hole, two huge holes in my heart that
Yeah.
no amount of success, no zeros behind the sale of my startup will ever fill that hole. It shrinks it. There's always going to be two holes in my heart and my mom too. So that's three. And that's okay. That's okay. Because Paul, you live long enough, people are going to die.
Yep.
So at 60, when I tell my story, people are like, yeah, I've lost a son too. I mean, I meet a lot of people now, a lot of moms and dads that are in their 60s and
Yeah.
70s that lost children. It's just mathematically higher probability. Um, I didn't expect it at 50 though, the 23-year-old.
Yeah.
That was because none of my friends that I knew at the time, not one had lost a child. A lot of had, stillborn children and things like that, that were,
Yeah.
but I'm not demeaning that, but I'm saying, 23 is I knew one individual here in Cedar Rapids that his 6-year-old drowned in a pool.
Oh,
And I'm like, I had 23 years with Seth. He had 6 years with his boy. Come on. That
yeah.
that is that is just unfathomable. I mean, at least I can take to my grave some great memories of Seth graduating high school and sports, and he'll never have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
That is criminal in my mind.
Yeah.
And I had 21 years with my wife. I we went to Europe together. We scuba dove together. We had some amazing times. I know people that got married and lost their spouse in a car accident the same year,
hmm
and their daughter, the same crash. So it's like, what the hell do I have to be complaining about? You know,
Yeah.
you look deep enough, you'll find stuff to complain about. You'll find pity.
Oh, yeah.
You'll
Yep.
find bad luck. Woe is me. And um, if I'm speaking in front of 100 people, I could go around the room, pull up a table, and sit down and say, "Tell me something that's been very unfortunate in your life," and every single one of them are going to have a story. I didn't invent suffering and pain. We all
hmm
have it. It's different variances. You don't have children, but if you had a dog and it got hit by a car,
Yep.
it's the same
hmm
freaking pain, man.
Yep.
People will say, no, it's not. Well, yeah, it is. I mean, it really is. You don't have any kids, so
Yep.
you can't understand it. But, you know, I was never abused as a child, but I can certainly understand when I meet someone that was.
hmm
You don't literally have to go through someone's experience to be able to be empathetic.
Exactly.
Um, and I think that's how we right this ship that's sinking is just quit being so self-serving and quit being so judgmental and help those that are struggling with drugs and alcohol. Don't just throw them in jail. Don't say, well, if you die in a hotel with a needle in your arm, well, you knew better. And that's what people probably want to say about my son is, oh, well, he's dancing with the devil. Those things happen. It's like, I don't look at it that way. And I call BS on a whole system that doesn't provide ways for people to find their sobriety date. And who knows, maybe October 5th, Seth wakes up, didn't like heroin, looked in the mirror and decided to be sober, becomes a motivational speaker, writes a book. That's why we have to give people a chance to live to tomorrow. You never know. Everybody I talk to that's older has a day they became sober. And if they would have died the day before, it would have been a crime. So let's just reach out. Let's help those people struggling. Let's be a lot more understanding the plight that not everybody has the same path you have. Some have it worse, some have it better, some have it the same. But most everybody has a unique story, a unique skill set they can bring to the table. Everybody does. Everybody does. We don't tell that with kids today.
One, I wanted to circle back to, your wife Prudence and your son and your caregiving experience. And one of the things that right now, a lot of the data in the caregiving space, most often women are kind of the ones who get the light kind of shined on them as the family caregivers. And I think there's a lot of, historical gender expectation, the way our culture here in the US was kind of designed. But I do believe, and I'm seeing a lot more men who truly have been family caregivers, whether it was for children, whether it was for an aging parent, or to your point, it was kind of all three at different points: your child, your spouse, your parent, right? Or parents. What are some things that we can do, at Tumbleweed and with Sandwich to help bring more men into the conversation that are caregivers?
Well, I think it's the society's that elevates men to this position of like, we're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be, captains of the ship. We're supposed to be, although that has really shifted. A lot of men today, that what's it called, masculine toxicity or something, where they're now criticizing young men for being too masculine. I think that it is shifting almost to the opposite direction now. But I know when Prudence was struggling, it was different than when Seth was struggling. When you're a husband versus a dad, because I dealt with my alcoholism differently than she did, so I assumed that she could deal with it the same way I dealt with it. And that's a big misinterpretation of the recovery community, is that everyone has their own pathway. Mine was just quitting cold turkey, looking in the mirror, telling myself, I got this. My wife's was a completely different path. And unfortunately, hers ended up taking her life. But I think what I learned was that there's no right way. And I think for parents, when you're a caregiver for either your parents, your spouse, or your children, there's no right way, but you need to try all the ways. Like you should try tough love. You should try enabling. Honestly, I enabled my son and my wife many times. I give my son money, got him an apartment. People say, well, should have been in rehab. You enabled him, Jeff. It's like, again, I think these are statements that come from people that probably haven't lived in that experience. They don't understand. I think we need to be very, very careful of how we judge people until you've lived in those shoes of those people, and that goes from anybody. I've never had cancer. I wasn't abused as a child. Just because I wasn't doesn't mean I can't be understanding and empathetic, and there is no correct way. Just try them all. That's what I would say. And then just listen and love. At the end of the day, anyone listening or watching this, Paul, will agree with this 100%. There's nothing more helpless than trying to change behavior of somebody that's in a destructive pattern. There is nothing more helpless than trying to change behavior than someone who's in a destructive pattern. And I used to say, it's like watching this car in slow motion going to the edge of the cliff, and you see the person driving and they're screaming and you're in slow motion dream. You can't stop the car. And they just keep going, and you just see it go over the cliff. And I saw that twice. And then I almost saw me do it myself. And so I have so much respect for caregivers because it's a thankless position, but it's so necessary and needed that it takes a lot of being selfless, and unfortunately selfishness as well. You got to be selfish with your time. You got to take care of your mental health. You can't be saying yes to everything, and you have to prioritize what's important to you. And if your son or daughter struggling is the most important thing to you, then you got to look in the mirror and say, what can I do today? Can I stop drinking myself? Can I go to talk to a therapist about this? Should I read a book? Should I watch a podcast? What can I do today to be net positive when I go to bed? And that's a game I play with myself all day long. When I go to bed, I think that I have more wins and losses today. And I don't put too much weight on the loss. Even if it's a big loss, I go on the number of wins. So if I have one big loss, like a VC guy told me he wasn't going to invest, but I had 4 little wins, that's a net positive for me. I'm not weighting them. I'm just doing off pure number. And if you do that over time, you're going to have a a lot higher probability of having an enjoyable lived experience.
I really enjoyed our conversation and I took a lot away from it. To your point, I have not experienced the loss of a spouse or a child. And there are so many things that you shared that still resonated. And even your approach as a founder, or just, how you view aging and legacy are really very meaningful. And I think our listeners are going to take a lot away from it. So,
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure.
Likewise. And I appreciate your candor and, your ability to share all and not feel odd or uncomfortable about it. So, we really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, man.
Jeff, thank you. And this has been another episode of Sandwiched. We'll see you next Friday.
Sandwiched is a Second Act studio production with production support by Brennan Plank and the Tumbleweed team. We thank Tumbleweed for their support. And remember, we are better together. See you next week.